Welcome back to the shop, or welcome to the shop if this is your first time. Today I am going to be figuring out exactly where some of my wiring is going to go. Now for the most part, I already know where the lights are going to go, as well as the power switches for the interior lights and the exterior lights as well. However, what I don't know is exactly where I'm going to have certain outlets and the little battery reader. Along with that, I also need to figure out if some of these plugs that I have actually have a light on them. Because, well, I don't want it to be using electricity, which means that I would definitely have to put it on one of these little on-off switches here. Now, not only do I want it to not be using electricity when it's not in use, I also don't want a bunch of LEDs in my trailer because, one, I do get migraines, and the worst thing for that is a bunch of LEDs lighting up a very small area. So I need to check these, which is why I have this little battery right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Then we can start figuring out exactly where I want to put certain things. Alright, so what I learned from that is unfortunately all of my little USB charger ports do have a blue light on them. I don't want a light at all, so I am going to search online real quick to see if I can find any that I can replace with the ones that I already have. Alright, so I've came to the conclusion that I just need to come to a conclusion. And I think that no matter what, nothing's ever going to be perfect with this, at least in my head, until I just do it. And it is what it is. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this wiring and where I wanted things. So I think the conclusion is that is that originally I was going to put the voltmeter as well as this plug on the shelf area right above this here. But the more that I started thinking about it, I was like, this would be nice to be able to see it all the time, or at least a lot of the time, and it's most convenient to be able to turn it on and off because this does have a power switch on it. If it was up here where the power switches for the lights and things like that are going to be, because I can reach it from here when I am in the sitting position, check it, and turn it off right away. As well as if I'm laying down, as this is the head of the bed, then I can also just, sit up basically and turn it on to check the battery. Now it's not going to be as convenient when I am at the doors. However, I can always put a voltmeter in the back galley so that if I'm outside of the trailer or in the doorway, I can very easily just go back there and check it. I'm pretty sure that if it's up here, it wouldn't be much just to lean back, turn it on, and check it as well. So I think that that's going to be the best place for it. I was considering putting it onto the front little console here. I was thinking like right down here would be nice, but then I'm having to turn around all the time to check it, and well, my back is in pain most of the time anyway, so I think that this would probably be a bad place for it. Now what I am going to do is I am going to put this whole entire panel on a power switch. I don't know if I'll move this one over or just put it on this side, and then I will also have this other USB port in here somewhere as well. Now because one of the purposes for me to get this panel thing here with the USB and the auxiliary port is because I wanted the auxiliary for a heating blanket in here if I ever got one. And so this isn't going to be used a lot, so I think I can actually hide it. So here we are at the end of the bed, and all of the open spaces will have some type of door over them and covering them, as well as this little cubby here will be sanctioned off from this one, as well as above it, because above it is where all of the electrical wires and things like that are, because the power box is actually right behind this portion here. So because I'm going to have a wall here, and a little roof to this, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the little 12 volt outlet here, because remember it doesn't have a light, and I can shove it right up underneath here, which means it'll be out of sight, and it will only need to be used when I am using something that only has one of those auxiliary power supplies to it. So I think that's going to be a good option, as it's not something that needs to be over here or be seen a lot, because it's probably barely going to be used. By doing so, if I ever did want to plug in anything with the USB down here, I can just get one of the USB little chargers that goes in here, and I can still plug it in and call it good. That also gives me the option in the future that if I decide that I do want USBs down here, to just go ahead and add them in by jumping off of this. And now that I know where the little battery monitor goes, we can start working on that next. And where that's going to go is right here. I've got the outdoor switches and the interior switch right here. It's going to go like so. Now I have a problem, because, well, the easiest way to do this would be to get out a Dremel and a little cutting wheel and cut the plastic into a square, and all's good and dandy. However, I don't have a Dremel. So I did what any guy does, and I called my dad. Because he is very good with thinking outside the box when it comes to how to get stuff done with limited tools. So we were talking through it, and he reminded me of the drill bit that I used for getting the holes in the joists here a day or so ago. And well, here it is. This is the closest size that I have that will match the back of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a few holes in here, and then I'm going to hopefully be able to take the razor knife to it and clean it up and get it so that that little thing fits perfectly in there. So fingers crossed. Let's see how this goes. All right, so I learned two things during this process. The first one is that I should have drilled the outer holes and then went to the inner hole to bore out the majority of the material. The second thing is that an oscillating tool, even when dull, can cut through plastic pretty well. And I probably should have just went that route right to start off with. Because as you can see here, the oscillating tool is cutting right through that plastic with no problem whatsoever. Once I got the majority of the material out of there, I was able to fuss around with the razor blade and really fine tune it to be able to fit. Now I am pretty positive that it is not perfectly straight in there right now, or even centered very well, but I think for now it will do, as I am going to be looking into possibly changing out the material that I use for this whole entire sheet. But I'll be able to use this as somewhat of a template, at least if I do find something. So the next step for this piece is going to be putting the light back in and then rewiring it all with a 16 gauge wire. I worked the rest of it that afternoon, as well as a portion of this afternoon, to get some of this wiring done. Now I got most of it done on the portion that goes above me yesterday. There was just a couple things on that I needed to do, but I needed to run some more wires and get all of that portion of it figured out so that then I could put this all back. But one of the big things that I was kind of concerned about was the center console right here. And as you can see, I now have 2 plugs in it and a switch. Now, although I wasn't able to find any USB power outlets that didn't light up, because for some reason they all have to. I mean, most of them are used for cars, where your car is going to be running when they're on anyway. But I was able to find a switch that doesn't light up unless if it is powered on, which means that I still have a visual indicator for when it's on, but it won't always be on if I don't want it to be, and that will control the lights for the USB plugs. So here is the center console as it sits right now. Now this could change in the future. However, for right now, I think that having 4 USB plugs right here is going to be plenty, or should be, because most of the things that I use right now, including my camera, runs off of a charger that can be plugged into a USB. So we've got 2 here as well as 2 here. I might take these off, I'm not quite sure yet. So I do have this hooked up to a battery, but I just tested this on camera here, and you guys can't see the light. So let's go ahead and put this inside of the trailer where it's a little darker. Alright, so now we got it set up where it's a little bit darker. You'll see that there's a ring, as well as a little square around the outlets that light up, as well as there's a light on this here as well. So there's the USB lights, and then there's that big bright light right there. Now I thought that it was going to be nice to have that light up. However, that's going to be pretty bright when it's dark out and this cabin is shut off. And I might want to charge my batteries and stuff while I'm sleeping. So this switch may end up getting switched out, and because I'm sure that I can find one without the little LED on it. So as you see, when I turn it off, everything goes dark and everything is light. Now to get this to work, I was trying to make myself some little jumpers and things. However, I turned around and I saw the packaging for this. This is the USB outlet that I was going to have on the cabinet area, and I've decided to not do that and just go with a auxiliary cigarette type port. And well, this had a bunch of little jumpers to jump from one to the other and then to your power and negative. So I actually stole these and put them right back here. So here we've got our power in and our negative, which then goes in to a 3-prong switch and up to the first power outlet and then the second. So all I have to do now is put the proper ends on this for the wire that goes up to the power source, and the center console will be done for the time being. Alright, so now let's take a look at the overhead console. We still have the same light position. Then we come down here to the battery monitor. We got a power switch for the passenger side, one for the driver's side, and our dimmer power switch for that light. At the bottom here we have the power for the center console at 14 gauge wire coming all the way up to what looks like just as big of a mess as before. Unfortunately, doing this didn't get rid of the mess, it just got rid of a couple of power cords. So let's take a closer look and see what's actually going on here. First one, we've got the power coming in for the bottom. This is the negative for the exterior lights. I still have to put the ends on them. Then we have the main power. Now I did get these little clips here for the main power just because I wanted it to stick out differently than the other one. Then right here we have a power and negative going to this light bulb here. Then we have a splice in that same wire that goes to a positive and negative for the light in front of the fan, which comes all the way back and goes to this here switch. Then we have 2 last power cords here that are for the exterior lights. Now when you follow in the main power, you'll see a splice here because these only come in certain lengths. And then you follow it back even further, and you'll see right here the negative splits into 3 wires. One of those goes to the battery monitor, one of them goes to the exterior lights, and one of them goes to the switch. The power also splits up to 2 powers for here, one for the battery monitor and then one for this here switch. Now my thoughts on the wire is that I hope that it's done right. I know that a lot of the power splitting where I go from 1 wire to 3 is actually supposed to be kind of leapfrogged like the back of the center console is. However, with these wires and the little adapters that I needed to use and stuff, that just wasn't really feasible and didn't really make any sense to try and do it that way. Now, I suppose I could have done it that way with the exterior lights, but honestly, I didn't really think about it, and I probably should have done it that way so I didn't have 4 powers going into 1 power. But I honestly don't think that it makes that big a difference, and I hope that if somebody sees this that knows better, please do tell me so that if it's a fire hazard, then I can fix it. Because that's the last thing I want, is this thing to go up in flames. So now that the wiring's done, I'm just going to clean it up a little bit with a little bit of Velcro strapping and get it put back up into the ceiling. Inside the trailer, what I've done is I have hooked up that light, got that back into its place, ran a bunch of wires all the way around in those tubes, and right here is where they come out. I've even marked them so that I don't get them confused. This one's that back light. This one here is 2 extras so that I didn't have to worry about just running those later. I figure while I was running these other ones, might as well. And then we have the back power for the outlet powers right here. And those all come out here. Here are the side lights that I need to put the proper ends on so that those can be plugged in. So I was thinking, which can be quite dangerous sometimes, that I could hypothetically test this by plugging in one of these little plugs, putting on an extension, and having that go into some alligator clips and then to that little mower battery. But I didn't quite know if that was right. So I made a couple of calls. They said as long as there's no bare wires on the exterior lights, then everything should be fine and should be able to test it. So that's what we're going to do right now. I'm kind of excited because this could hypothetically make or break the last 3 days of work. So there is the power. Here are the alligator clips. Negative to the negative, positive to the positive. Guys, we have battery. All right, so here we go. We've got 75% in the battery. And we can scroll through to see how many volts we have and an off. Now here, of course, we've got the power. Now one thing that I found out about this switch here is that I may want to get it switched, because if I turn it on, I dim it, which is making the screen go all funky. But I turn it off, then I go to turn it back on, it goes right back to the brightest setting. So it's not remembering the dimness of the lights when you go to turn it back on. So that is something that I'll have to fix. Now, of course, these here, I can't check that because there's no lights on the outside of the trailer right now. But we can go down here and test out this. And unfortunately, I'm not getting any power from that at all. So I'm gonna have to figure out what was wrong with that and get right back here. All right, so this goes to prove that I can definitely be a dunce. The front console isn't ran off the same power. It's got its own power because of how many volts and amps I'm gonna be pulling off of that sometimes. So yeah, let's test it out now though. And there we go. We've got a center console that is working. So here we are at the end of this video with the 12 volt in the inside of the trailer. Well, pretty much finished. Now there are a couple of things that I need to try to figure out. One of them is right up here. See this little bulge right here? I had to figure out why that happened and how to remedy that, or I need to figure out a different material to make this entire piece out of. Now one thought that I had was that I might be able to expand the holes to the screws a little bit so that the plastic can expand and contract freely, which would help with having no dip in the plastic, because that wasn't there last fall and it was there this spring. So I'm not sure what exactly happened, but I got to figure something out. So if you have any ideas, please let me know. As well as if you know of a better material, it needs to be black because that's kind of matching the interior, as well as it needs to be somewhat affordable. Now, I already spent a lot of money on this plastic, but I am willing to upgrade it for something that would be a little bit better. Now that a big part of the interior lighting is done, it means that I can move on to some other steps. And this took a big load off of me, and I'm really glad that everything works as it should, at least so far anyway. Because now I can move on to working on the cabinet, because the cabinet needs cabinet doors, as well as the main thing in the cabinet needs dividers for the cabinets and the electrical area. So I'm hoping that in the next couple of videos, I'll be able to be working on getting that done. And with that, of course, will be the auxiliary port that will be connected up to the same wiring that the fan and the galley lighting is. So I won't be able to finish any of that portion of the wiring until I am pretty much done with the trailer and I can put the fan in. Now that most of the wiring is ran and done in the trailer here, all I'll have to do yet is hooking up the wiring for the fan, the back galley lights, as well as the 12-volt auxiliary port. In the next video, I am hoping to be able to get the divider put up in that cabinet, as well as figure out where the ports for the air conditioner in the future will be able to be located or situated inside the trailer, as well as in between in the wall. And of course, if you are looking at building a trailer like this one, or better for yourself, please do follow the DIY Teardrop Campers community on Facebook. I have their link down below in the video description, as well as a book that I am using to build this entire thing. Until next time, as always, you have a good one.